And we're back. Welcome if you're just catching up to us. My name is Chris Cayer. You're on the Business Speakers Radio Network, and we're having great chats with some fantastic guests today. My next guest is the amazing Philip Lauer of Paladin Consulting. Philip, welcome to the show.
Chris, how are you? Good to talk to you at like dark 30. You're in Arizona, man. I'm in Philly. What the heck?
Uh, hey, as long as it's not snowing here, Armageddon hasn't happened. We're good.
Yeah, okay. All right. I buy into that. Although I like the snow. My little girls are like, oh, snow's coming. And I'm like, yeah, so shoveling.
Exactly. Yeah. I left all that. It's that horrible four-letter word vocabulary that the Northerners have. That I just don't want to worry about snow, cold, hail, wind, rain. I'm down here with simple, easy vocabulary, three letters only:
Yeah.
dry, hot,
No. Yeah.
sun.
Yeah. Dust.
No, that's what doors are for.
Well, okay.
Air conditioning.
There you go. So how's it going, man? Good to talk to you again.
Yeah, obviously a very busy weekend. we're
Yeah.
having lots and lots of people on, and it's fantastic conversations going on. Um, and when we were talking in the show prep for this particular show, we touched on some fantastic leadership um, discussion points, and I want you to help the audience understand a little bit about how your background has really helped you um, develop and transform leaders uh, in all different walks, so that they can serve their employees in a more effective and engaging capacity.
Yeah, I had a couple of amazing folks in my life that really, really taught me skills, and taught me work ethic, and taught me how to take care of things from stocking shelves and dusting bottles and
Oh,
you
good.
know
I thought you were going to say you had a very particular set of skills.
no, I'm not an operator in that sense of the word, but I'm sure we might be able to make a few phone calls.
There,
So no, I
friends
had
in low
this old
places.
Navy guy. Yeah, it's funny. I had this old Navy guy. One of my first jobs, aside from doing a paper route, was working at a grocery store, and he just drilled into you that no matter what you did it to the best you could. He had a very high standard, and even if he was torqued off at you, he still treated you like a human being. Taught me how to mop floors, taught me how to take care of customers, and then he taught me operations, and always operating, just thinking about what's going to make the next ROI, what's going to make the next impact on the customer. How do you take care of the customer? How do you take care of a team? And he had a real impact on me just throughout college, because it was one of the three jobs that I worked. I ended up going to grad school and getting a master's in organizational management because it was always about people. It was always about leaders. It was always the the qualitative side, not the quantitative, like in a typical MBA, which is going to be finance and macro and microeconomics and finance and managerial accounting, which I studied. But it was all for me. It was always about what makes people tick. And I love seeing teams come together, and all of a sudden ROI shoots up because finally things are clicking. That's fun.
Sounds very A-team, very, very Hannibal. Love when a plan comes together.
Here, hold this. Yeah.
So I understand you've come up with a tool that helps you identify, from the perspective of the employees,
Yep.
where a leader's strengths and weaknesses are, and how to help them improve better. Can you talk a little bit about how the tool works, and how our audience might benefit from it?
Sure. So one of the jobs that I had most recently, for a couple of years, I worked with a Fortune 200 company, and they had hundreds of offices all over the country. And for myself, my aspect of the project was to work from Maine to Miami and from the Pennsylvania line south through Georgia plus Nashville. So I had hundreds of managers that I was training on leadership development. And some of these offices had 1% turnover,
Hmm.
and other offices had 234% turnover. Yeah. And that was at one level of employee, and they had five levels of employees.
Yeah.
Management turnover was through the roof in some of these places. It was really, really, really hard. So one of the things that I learned very quickly from research that I had done and from different things that I had read and whatnot was that there are basically 15 universal leadership behaviors that every leader in every business needs to understand. And if you can understand a DISC profile or a Myers-Briggs or a Strength Finder or a 360 or any of the other assessments, and the fact that they get taken and then a person doesn't align that to their personal what's in it for me,
Yeah.
there's no engagement on the leader's part. Well, if there's no engagement on the leader's part, the employees don't care because now there's no what's in it for me from the employee's part. So
Yeah.
basically, we've got a leadership skills and metrics development process or system that takes the leaders, takes the employees, brings them together. Boom, we got money.
And it's very metrics based.
Oh yeah,
They may
it's
be
100%
somewhat
metrics based.
subjective metrics, but it's still you don't have a way of being able to extract from employees their subjective opinions in a non-subjective way.
Correct. So what you have to do is you've got to anonymize the data.
Yeah.
You have to have enough of a sample, but not too big of a sample. And then you can use big numbers, and you can say, okay, but the trend in this company, the trend in this department, the trend in
Yeah.
this division, whatever, the trend in the industry. You start looking at it from a much larger perspective. And we've got the tool online right now, but we do a lot of hands-on, and so it's an ongoing process. You can't be one and done, fire and forget. It doesn't work that way. I don't know how many times I've taken a disc profile or extended disc or whatever, and I'm like, yep, that's me, and it gets ash canned because
Yeah.
I already understand it. Well, okay, so if I do that, how many other people do that and don't even take the next step, which is to say, what can I change? What can I modify? How can I adapt my strengths? And so these 15 behaviors that every leader has, automatically, you're doing some of them exceptionally well, and others, you pretty much stink.
Yeah. I was going to say room
You
for
know?
improvement if that room was measured in football fields. Um, and another part to those assessments that I always had a hard time with was that they measure you where you are in the moment,
Yes,
where your headspace is in the moment.
right,
And what a lot of people don't really grasp about them, that they're sold on the premise usually that these are that person's personality.
right,
Well, if you take that
right.
person and for 20 years put them in a cage, a
Hmm.
4 foot by 8 foot cage, and you squeeze all the productivity you can out of them,
Right,
that's not the same person that's
exactly.
underlying them. That's the person that's being squeezed that hard for
Right,
that.
exactly. Well, and so the challenge, for example, when I do a Myers-Briggs, when I was certified in Myers-Briggs, one of the things that we did was we told people, you're going to take this in the morning and 2 or 3 days later, and not four, just 2 or 3 days later, in the afternoon or the evening, you're going to take it at a different time of day. And we're going to get a picture of you. Now, the way I was certified in Myers-Briggs was pretty interesting also because we use a lot of work from like David Kiersey, which he wrote an amazing book called Please Understand Me Too. And you take a look at that book and he talks about how there are 16 profiles
Mm-hmm.
in 4 different quadrants, and you might be one that you tend to hit all the time as default, but based on stress or work style or whatever, you're going to float.
Yeah.
And so when we do our ongoing engagements, we recognize you're floating throughout the whole year.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of things that impact your life. And so we have to have high touch, but with a low footprint.
Yeah.
So what we do is we do a baseline assessment of every leader we work with. We talk about their team, what's going on. We onboard them in our process, explain what's going on, and then we retarget every quarter. But we also have conversations on a monthly and weekly basis sometimes. So it's ongoing, but it's high. So it's high touch, but it's low footprint because operationally you need to make money. And if I'm sitting
Yeah.
there, leaning over your shoulder, I'm not doing you a favor.
Yeah. Well, and the other part of that's so critical is that I like to extrapolate this into a sports world because I think more people, both men and women, can relate to it a little more easily.
Sure.
The whole point of sports coaching, and you don't just have a head coach, you have In football, you have the offensive line coach, the defensive line coach,
Special
the
teams, all of
special
that,
teams,
right?
the defensive backs. You have dozens and dozens of coaches and scouts and other people and trainers, all
Hmm.
there focused on specific niche areas.
Right.
And it's all for one goal,
Yeah.
performance optimization.
Right.
So when we're talking about this is about leadership optimization, right?
Always. You always have to be. Look, the bottom line is if you want to even build bench strength, you have to know how to do that.
Yeah.
And if a company is not thinking innovatively, there's probably an issue with diversity. And and I don't mean diversity from a political or
Mm.
socioeconomic standpoint. I mean diversity in thought.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, Harvard's great, but if you've got a whole bunch of Harvard people, you don't have diversity in thought
Yeah.
as much as you would if you're bringing somebody in from Southern Wesleyan and somebody else
Yeah.
from Northwestern. You see what I mean? So we fostering diversity, just one of many behaviors. Listening first and speaking last. Showing loyalty. How often does a leader do that? Even when headcount has to be reduced, what can you then do to help that person advance despite the circumstances?
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the reason I'm focusing on that. Part of it, though, is that there are lots of people out there who focus on performance improvement of teams.
Right.
Lots of people who work on personal performance.
Right.
There really aren't. I mean, there are lots of leadership experts, but there aren't that many who work on leadership performance metrics.
Right.
Leadership performance optimization.
Right.
It's a different category, just like you have, again, the offensive line versus the defensive line, the batting
Right.
coach versus the pitching coach. You got different strokes for different folks. And in
Yeah.
this case, there's a whole category of businesses and business leaders who, if you're out there listening to the show, who is your leadership performance optimizing metric supplier? Who is giving that data to you so you can make better decisions about
Right.
how you make decisions?
Yeah. Well, there's something else that we're missing in I know that we pressed for time. One of the aspects of this is that a minimum right now of just in the United States, it's worse elsewhere, but 70% of your team on average is already disengaged. I mean, they're either passively engaged, which is not making any money for you, or they're actively disengaged. So if 70% of your team on average right now doesn't care, you have to even look at the leaders below you
Yeah.
if you're in a senior level and say, well, what percentage of them truly care, have truly bought in? And those aren't my numbers. That's Gallup,
Yeah.
right? And they've
Exactly.
done worldwide surveys, and it's amazing. But companies that truly understand the dynamic between service climate, if you will, and how it drives results. There was a fascinating study done in the Journal of Leadership and Organizational Studies. And they talked about bringing leaders and employees or teams together, their expectations when they were aligned. They didn't have to be perfect. They didn't have to overlap completely. But when people understood what the leader was trying to achieve and their temperament, their style, etc., they bought in. Now, it still wasn't perfect, but when you understand employee engagement, your likely improvement of earnings per share goes up to 132% better than your competition. And that comes out of MIT Sloan's management review. So, I mean, these are universal numbers. You either get it or you don't.
And they aren't 5%, right?
No,
And
no,
these are
yeah,
people in positions of influence within your organization that can direct your ship,
yeah,
not just it's leadership.
yeah. What's a 20% improvement do for your bottom line?
Yeah.
What happens to your bottom line when your top performers are 87% less likely to leave your organization?
And take your clients with them.
Uh, Right, or all of that institutional knowledge and start their
Yeah.
own side hustle.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
Ridiculous power of impact. And
yeah,
so to follow that up, you
sure,
have a powerful offer for
yeah,
the holidays. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
sure. So, bottom line, what we do is we provide relevant data It's a trackable progress reporting system that we have. Like I said, there's multiple high impact and low footprint, if you will, analyses over the course of a year. We normally would sell that for about $7,000 plus. We're going to do it for $1,000.
For up to what team size?
Um, Bottom line, we're really looking at wanting to measure 6 to 10 people that work for a leader. So it could be any team anywhere. We're going to then work with that leader and that team to help transform them.
Okay. And what kind of an impact does that? I mean, obviously you can't pick a specific number because every case is different. But
Sure.
obviously, when you're tracking that kind of leadership to employee engagement,
Mm-hmm.
what are some case examples of how that pans out in real life?
Well, so I've got a use case. If somebody wants to find out more about it, we'll have a link, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And they can click on this link. This is a real use case. I was given permission to give some information regarding a couple of quarters of this process. And it was with a telecommunications firm, but we've used this with insurance agents. We've used it with different businesses. Restaurateurs can use this. I mean, it depends on the nature of their team and the size of the business itself. But in this particular instance, this office within 2 years had gone from being productive and profitable to hiring and promoting, I should say, 2 leaders that were not skilled. I guess is the best way of putting it. And the bottom line was they thought they were doing their best. They thought they honestly were having a positive impact. Projects were getting turned back. They were late on delivery. The costs were overrunning. People were quitting the office. Complaints were coming from not only customers, but reviews on Glassdoor. I mean, it was ugly. And we turned it around. And we built the skills within the organization, within the team. Everything got back online. And once it's back online, the customer's happy, you're retaining customers, so you're driving ROI.
That's just huge for so many companies, especially
Yeah.
looking at what their plan's going to be for 2019. This
Right.
is where those executives are already looking to sow next year's crops. The harvesting is already done. This is the sowing for next year. And who are you going to take with you on your team?
Right. And right now, fourth quarter, unfortunately, it's when a lot of companies, because they're on a calendar year business cycle, they're making headcount decisions.
Yeah.
And if you want to make your strongest impact, you need to make sure that your leadership is in good place.
And you're picking the right team members. I mean, look at any sports team, and if you've got the wrong coaches, you got the wrong GMs, your team's probably not going to be all that effective.
Yeah.
Just a guess, right? And if you
Right.
can see that obviously in a sports team, why would that not apply to your business? So I'm going to encourage everybody, go to bsrnradio.com, and on our front page, you're going to see a article about Philip and the wonderful work that Paladin's doing. And you're going to click on that, and you're going to find the link to the leadership skills metrics offer and to the use case.
Exactly. Yeah, and if anybody's got a question, they can shoot me an email. They can even call me. I've got my phone number in the link.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Philip. And any big plans for the holidays?
Yes, sleep. Actually, you know what?
How many entrepreneurs? That's exactly. What do you want for Christmas?
Rest 25 hours a day so I get an extra one.
Somnambulance. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm actually really, really looking forward to I love to cook. Used to run restaurants, ran 11 restaurants when I was younger and had hair. And I'm looking forward to cooking and spending time with my girls and my wife.
So is that where the hair went?
No, it did not.
Oh,
I wear a hairnet. Come on.
Okay,
really? Surf safe, babe.
Great chatting with you. As
All right,
always,
Chris, take care.
We'll get together next week. Thanks a whole bunch.
Roger that. All right, man. Take care. See you.